Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Paul Gagne. Paul Gagne is the co-author of a new book with Kim Goss. Kim Goss is his co-author, and the new book is called Get Stronger, Not Bigger. The Bulkless training system that helps women become powerful without adding muscle mass. Paul Gagne is a strength coach, a posturologist, and founder of the Train with the Pros system. And you can find out more about Paul Gagne and his wonderful work at his website, www.pg-performance.com. Welcome, Paul Gagne.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.
Now, Paul Gagne, in this world that we live in, I know there's personal trainers all over the place. You are a step above. So will you, you're not a personal trainer, you are in a whole other class unto yourself. So will you share with our audience how many years, how many decades have you actually been a strength coach?
This is my 38th year. I mean, that's, I started, I was 2 years old, but that's okay. It's
me too.
Yeah.
I think they say it takes 10,000 hours of practice to be to become a master at anything, right? Yeah. So, okay. So we are very honored to have you on this show. And your co-author, Kim Goss. Will you share for our audience a little bit about Kim Goss?
Oh, Kim, we met together like 25 years ago. He always been my ghost writer. I've never written anything, and a lot of the top strength coach that you could read over the years, from Charles Poliquin and many, he was the guy behind it. We just throw him our system, and then he puts it. He's the only one that could extract from my brain exactly how I would write it, but he writes way better than I do. And for years before we had like phones or stuff, we just recorded on a little tape. And in the morning, he used to send me like 3-4 pages of the interview. It was perfect to review it. And that was the main thing. And Kim has a master's degree in exercise science, is a very established strength coach with the Army. That's what makes it very easy for us to because a lot of authors or a lot of editors or writers, they don't understand what we call in our language the iron game. And Kim knows it inside out. He was a very well-known, also very well-established Olympic weightlifter, and he worked with many of my top athletes over the years to help him. And we started the collaboration about 25 years ago as a posturologist, writing articles, but also as a consultant for him. And he did the same for me. And we made that's why he came up with the idea of the book. And then basically his system, it's called Bulkless system, because a lot of women, they don't want to put on size, especially young girls. And they feel like I don't want to look like a lot of, sadly, like if you look at CrossFit, you look at like bodybuilders, a lot of women and a lot of girls, they don't want to look like that, but they want to be stronger. They understand that for their health, they want to be more athletic looking. At the Olympics, you'll see I got the Dufour-Lapointe sisters in Beijing. Just before our interview, I was with them directly from Beijing, because we're 13 hours away. And they're very feminine. They have their own line of clothing, but they're gold and silver medalists in Sochi. They're the only time in the history of skiing that two sisters won silver and gold. And now in Pyeongchang, the last Olympics, the previous one, Justine, who won gold in Sochi, won silver. And now they're their last Olympic. Chloe, it's going to be her fourth, and Justine her third. I've been with them for almost 20 years. They're like And just they are on the back cover. They have a lot of pictures in our book too, explaining how these Olympic athletes, superstars, could stay very feminine and a very, very strong body. And Kim is an expert at Browns. He does the same thing. And I've been doing it with figure skaters, gymnasts, dancers. It's always touchy to train them because sadly in figure skating, there's a bit of a like aesthetic kind. Same with, I used to work a lot with synchronized swimmers, and sadly, they're kind of judged by their physique. They have to be super strong, super athletic without looking like the Hulk.
Who wants to look like the Hulk? And forgive me, because when I introduced the title of your wonderful book, Get Stronger, Not Bigger, I said the Buckles training. It's the
No, Bulkless.
Bulkless.
Yeah, no bulk. Yeah, yeah, that's
And
okay.
it's not a buckle like a belt buckle, the
No.
Bulkless training system.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this. So Paul Gagne, master trainer, master strength coach. Why should women train differently than men?
Well, they don't have to train that much differently, but it's just like the same system the bulkless could attract. Also, I use the same system with men. As an example, as a boxer that has to maintain a certain weight, but wants to increase his power and his lettuce, he's going to use pretty much the same system. Women, they have the ability. The big difference between men and women, they have more endurance than men. They have the ability to perform at a certain repetition. Let's say, as an example, let's say you do a squat at 75% of 1 RM, means your max is 100 pounds, you squat 75 pounds. A lot of time women will out rep a guy for the same amount. It's genetic too. In the genes, women are more, it's like in nature, females are more important than males, because if ever, God forbid, something happened, like everybody is extinguished, it takes one male to repopulate the earth, but it takes many female. Then they have to have more. They're kind of more, they're the mother. That's why we say motherhood. We don't say fatherhood. We're in the history, in all animals, kingdom, and everybody, the yin of the female is it's the opposite of the yang, but also has more of that endurance, and also for survival. Women will survive longer. It's been in research than in men in very adverse climate. That's why they carry. It's easier for them to carry more fat around the organs, like around the thighs, around the stomach. Also for breastfeeding, and also having nourishing. They take their nutrients from their body to give it to the child, and a man doesn't do that. And you see that. I'm from the countryside, and you see pictures, the first settlers like in Quebec and Montreal, and you see the women. They were kind of big, and like they were like solid. My mom was that kind. And most men will kind of skinny rail because they work very hard. They were like lumberjack, but women had a lot of kids. My mom had 11, and they had to take care of them, and they had to be equipped. We used to say in French that when you saw a skinny woman back then, you said, she won't make it through the winter in Quebec. It's like she won't make it. She had to have a bit of meat on the bone, we say in our language. And that's all. That's where the biggest difference between men and women is. Again, as repetition, you have to understand. And also most women, they carry a lot more weight in their legs. You have to be careful how you train them, especially when you got figure skaters, gymnasts, or people that they're kind of judged for their body shape. Then that's where Kim is really good at Olympic weightlifting, and many of the jump drills he invented to keep that athleticism without increasing the bulk.
Great explanation. Now, what specifically is, if you've got a female client, what's different about the weight training workouts that you design to build strong muscles without building big muscles for women? So what are some differences?
It's going to be a little more shorter repetition. You'll keep, like Olympic weightlifting is anything under 5 reps. You'll do multiple jump. You want to avoid also, that's why a lot of women were frustrated in spinning classes. When the time under tension is too long, let's say you're going to do leg press for 2 minutes, there's a good chance that it's great for hypertrophy for males and female, but a lot of girls won't like the effect. Same as on a bike. If you're always like doing spinning, a lot of time, don't be surprised that your thighs might get a little bigger. It's okay if you want that. I have hockey players, women, we do that with them, but in a certain time of the year. But for most of my female clients, they want to have a athletic physique, and shortening the rest period and shortening the reps, and also the range of motion of certain movements. But the key again is the time under tension, a muscle. If you're like bodybuilding style, very slow, big, like a minute, 45 seconds, like anything above 30, 45, 50 with adequate weight, you have more chances of developing bigger muscle. If you look at the Olympics and downhill skiing, this is a quiz I always ask my students when I give a lecture, which one you would think has the bigger thighs? The slalom, very quick, GS, or and also, or the downhiller, or or the super G. Super G and downhill, you're getting close to 2 minutes under tension. These athletes in downhill and super G, technically, if they don't do all four disciplines, but they only concentrate on one or two, they tend, not all, they tend to have a little bigger legs than their counterpart who only does slalom. Like that's in moguls, women, they don't have that much big legs because they're bouncing around. It's only 30 seconds, the movement. Even the guys are not that bulky. They look more like gymnasts because it's very athletic in moguls. That's what I train a lot. And that's the good news. We don't have to take care too much of their sport will not create big legs. If you saw male hockey players, rarely you saw a hockey player with skinny legs. It's very rare because of they're always bent, they're pushing constantly, and the time under tension on their legs is very, very high.
All right. So basically for women, they need shorter time under tension.
Yeah, and also to get a bit more metabolic effect, you shorten the time depending on your goal. But if it's for fitness, you shorten the rest period, lower the rep, but more intense. And then you will see that over time, your body will adapt in a way that you like it. You'll get stronger, but without getting bigger.
So let's talk about something obvious. An obvious difference between men and women is our hormonal differences. So both men and women have testosterone and estrogen, but men have more testosterone, which helps you build muscle and maintain muscle. How do hormonal differences between men and women affect the way women should train in the weight room?
Well, not that much the difference. Again, you want to it's hard to increase testosterone, but it's basically in our language, the calcium channels is a little quicker on men because some women, they have pretty high testosterone level, but their estrogen is a little higher too. Then it counterweights. Again, for women, strength training, in my opinion, it's even more important than men to keep bone. If you look again, our ancestors, being here from Quebec in a very, it's kind of we're living in a city, but we're from up north in the country. Life was tough. Like some days you had like -30, -35. A lot of women had to cut their own wood. They had to do a lot of labor, very, very hard labor. And that kept them in very, very good shape, even in farming, that was the basic thing. That they need to work hard to maintain their bone density. That's the main thing. Women will lose more bone density quicker than men because their muscles are a little smaller. Then you need to build more muscle than technically men if you want to have like a good bone structure. That's where, but the difference is not that great. Like as an example, my Dufour-Lapointe sister always trained with NHL hockey players. I've never trained them alone, rarely with other women. They train with guys. And it was very surprising how the difference is not that much. The difference is very cultural in a context. in our family, women are very strong. My mom was super strong. My sisters, and they were raised that not they would call the girly style. No, they were like not tomboys, but they played sport. They played hockey. They even not long. My son is 23, and my wife, who's 58, when they wrestled together, I would put $5 on my wife once in a while. But she used to train with me for 6 years, 7 years. She was my training partner. She used to squat like 225 pounds, bench press like a plate on each side. And she's not a big girl. And then, but she was really, really strong. And now she kept, I mean, sadly, she doesn't train as much, but she likes, I made her do a lot of these exercises that Kim invented and us in the book that we did. And she really likes it. She feels, women, when they start to do more strength training than cardio, they feel better. And what they found in certain research, by doing more, a bit strength training, your testosterone level tends to rise up a little more. Then they start to feel leaner. Says, oh, how come I'm not doing my 5-hour bike a week anymore and I feel leaner? It's more at the interval. Also, doing interval training will increase growth hormone output if you sleep well. And that's the major part of the difference. But again, if you would see my Olympic athlete women, they do a lot of things that my Olympic male will do. Only during the period of their like one time a month, we have to be careful. But most of my female athletes, they're so fit and healthy that during the part of the month where they might lose a bit of blood, or they don't see that difference. They may have 1 or 2 days of a bit of tummy ache, but that's about it. The rest is because they're very healthy and they eat very well too.
Now, let's take a moment to listen to a word from one of our sponsors. Now, Paul Gagne, master strength coach, 38 years of experience. Can you explain for our audience what is a Q angle and how does the female anatomy require a different approach to strength training?
I mean, the Q angle is like in nature when women, the pelvis will move a lot because of to prepare for giving birth. And then there's a little more elasticity, and technically the hips will be wider than the knees. That's why they call that the Q angle. It will create, in posturology, we talk about valgus for the foot when it collapses, valgum at the knee, and valgum at the hip. And that's what happens, is like it creates a relative valgus of the foot, valgus of the knee and the hip, because the hips become a little wider, especially after the first child. And that will create a relative internal rotation, especially at the ankle. A lot of women, they tend to sprain their ankles a little quicker than men. ACL injuries are higher amongst women, non-impact ACL rupture, because of the ACL ruptures when you internally rotate and hyperextend. Also, a lot of women, they have a little more laxity in the ligaments and the tendons. That's because of preparing the body to have a baby. You don't want to be a man. If they would invent a protocol to put us pregnant, we would not be able to deliver we don't have that same type of elasticity and movement of the pelvis. It would be all C-section every time. And this is what happens in a lot of athletes, women athletes. They have the tendency to have more C-section than normal. They become very muscular. They become very, very tight around the pelvis. And actually, I work a lot in Europe. I studied in Marseille, and a lot of obstetrician will have an osteopath working with them, and they will manipulate the pelvis as soon as the woman is carrying a baby, and also at delivery and after delivery. They will work on that. But that's basically, to make it short, hips are in correlation to the knees and the ankles a little wider. That creates that kind of knee in a bit, ankles in, not all the time, but amongst the general population. That's why when you train them, you have to be more careful about jumping and movement for a while. When the person gets a very good, she's coached by myself or Kim Goss or doing Olympic weightlifting, there's no problem. It's mainly on untrained girls or women that you have to be very, very careful of these figures, and working the foot a lot, working the posture. We do some eye exercise, making sure they're standing well on one leg, and they work a lot of the proprioceptors of their feet. The skin of the foot is more sensitive than your eyes. Then if you activate them a lot, walking bare feet in your house or training on these little spike mat, the little Shakti mat, or they call that cobblestone kind of little mats that we use, combing your foot, activating it, it will create a better environment, a more solidity into your foot, the angle of your foot, ankle, knee, and hip at the same time.
So Paul Gagne, what do you think are the best exercises for developing body awareness and this bulkless strength that women want in their lower extremities?
But again, we do a lot for, there's two questions in one in yours, but body awareness will come with a lot of drills on one leg, eyes open, eye closed. We have different charts that you need to move your eyes as you're standing on one leg. Even standing on one leg, doing type of crossing movement. Like we do a lot of movement. We tap, grab the ear, movement like this on one leg. Moving your body in space, working the VOR, vestibular ocular reflex, standing up, feet together, and you move your body, you move your eyes with a metronome. This will help a lot. Or doing like, if you have a slack line or movement like this on a beam, doing different type of squat, that will give you a lot of body awareness. This is a type of warm up we do a lot before they enter into the bulkless type of training, and it takes like 2-3 minutes to do that, max 5, and all the brain, basically your posture is a response of your brain. The eye muscle are connected to the brain and the skin of the foot, and then when you activate it properly, your brain function well, your vestibular system too, that's your inner ear, also with your eyes. That's why they call that VOR, vestibular ocular reflex. And when you do a lot of these exercises on 1 foot, 2 feet, depending on your level, when you start to do either Olympic weightlifting, these mini jumps, moving quickly, quick feet movement, that's part of the program, you will see that your body will respond better, your alignment will be better, and your position, always with your eyes at horizontal or a little higher, will help you to have a better posture.
Great answer. And now, and as far as a woman who wants to develop strength without bulk in her legs, what are the best exercises for developing strong legs without bulk?
But the good old squat is very, very good. If you keep your reps, you get a very explosive movement. As an example, if you do like a front squat and you keep the reps 3 to 6 reps very, very fast with kind of good weight, with full range of motion, you will see that you will develop very strong thighs, and you could combine that with a mini little jump. You could hold to a bar or without, and you do like in and out. I use a lot of rebounders too. I'm sitting on one, actually, that's why you might be seeing bouncing, and I'm sitting on a ball too, because I never sit down, I'm always standing up. But rebounders are really good exercise for women, for guys too. But for bulkless, this is one of my favorite exercise that will combine with either squats, because of that, a bit of instability, but also the plyometric effect of the rebounder. And those are really effective. But again, good back squat, front squat, and if you have a chance to learn very good technique for Olympic weightlifting, you'll fall in love with it. You don't need tremendous amount of weight, but the fact of using your coordination, doing a clean or a snatch, it's really effective to build, and also a great body without excessive bulk. Again, don't get me wrong, Catherine, bulk comes also with food. I've seen people, oh, Paul, I train hard, but look, but then when we analyze food intake, they eat a lot more than they expend. And also the quality of the food, sadly, in North America got down a lot the last 40 years because of the glyphosate and many of the Roundup, many of the chemicals we have. I work in Europe a lot, and I will spend, like before the pandemic, we have a place in Italy because of the we use a lot of flywheel technique, and they're in Biella, Italy. It's near Torino and Milano, and we used to spend 2 weeks there. And I don't eat bread here. I wanted to be a good guest. I thought, my God, I'm going to put on weight. You lose weight when you go and you eat way more than in Canada or US. The problem is the quality of the food here, and we eat organic. But in restaurants, like you go on the road, it's very hard to find organic food. And what do you know what they're doing in the back in the kitchen? We don't know. That's why we have to be careful about a training technique will be as good as your eating habits.
Great advice. Now I'm going to make some personal comments. So I'll be 63 next month. I'm 5'3", 119 pounds, and I'm very flexible. I teach yoga 8 times a week, but I know in order to maintain my balance as a person and to build my muscle and my bone health, I work on lifting weights. Years ago, I can remember dislocating my right wrist, working with an easy bar, trying to do bicep curls in the gym. And yet I understand from reading your book that one of the anatomical differences between men and women is our arms. So how should women train their biceps and triceps differently than men?
I like suspension training for a lot of my female athletes, especially now with the pandemic. If you look in the back, there's like this is a different type of TRX. It's like a swivel that's from Italy. But a lot of my female clients that I train on Zoom, they all have either a TRX or a swivel pulley, and that they're very satisfied. Regular dumbbell. I'm not a big fan of bars. Bars puts a lot of shearing force in your. When I like more segment, I like you to stabilize movement. You could use dumbbells because of the gravity. You could use a pulley. You could use rubber bands as long as you're moving. See, there's also the anatomy as an example for the bicep. You need to, the main function of the bicep is supination. If you keep your hands like in an easy curl bar, they're always contracted. I've seen a lot of people even damage their bicep and their wrist because we're not made to stay in that position. The movement, you need to move. You could do alternating, you could mix bicep and tricep. That's why suspension training is very easy. You're able to move your body in space, and it's like having 20 sets of dumbbells in your own room. And also, because of the nature of the angle, you're always working something else at the same time. Your body awareness increase a lot with suspension training.
Great answer. Now, in the US and UK, as you know, many women who want to get fit turn to personal trainers, and there's a huge personal training industry. How can a woman tell whether or not her personal trainer is helping her or hurting her?
Well, off the bat, if you don't do you don't have to be a posturologist like I am, but even Kim is not, but he has experience. But every client he sees, every athlete he sees, he does a little postural eval. If they don't look at you, either with a plumb line or checking you, they have these apparatus now. You could use like a little stick to get to see how are you against gravity. Are you forward? Do you have one shoulder down, one hip higher? Are your feet? Even a lot of pro athletes that I don't work with, then they send them to me. The team send them to me as a consultant. They're shocked that I make them remove their socks. It says, no one ever saw my feet. It says, guys, you're standing on what? You could have the biggest legs, the biggest calves, but if your feet are defective, then you will the whole body. It's like the base. It's like the basement in a house. It's the foundation. That's why right away off the bat, make sure that the person has a background, understand postural alignment. When your posture is well aligned, you might be surprised like 90% of the equation is done because you know that you will grow whatever you'll put on muscle or whatever load you're going to have. It's going to be on a very, very posturally balanced body. And that's the key.
Great answer. And now let's take another break to hear a word from our sponsor. So Paul Gagne, you already know, and this is the reason that you and Kim Goss wrote this book, that many women look at photos of female weightlifters and decide, we don't want to look like that. I know I don't want to look like that. What kind of extreme diets and intense training do women need to do to become a female bodybuilder to look the way they look?
But sadly, if you're talking about the real bodybuilders, most of them, they take steroids. That's the problem, and that's a no-no. We're talking about hormones. That would be the worst you could do for women. Although the sport of bodybuilding for women really went down a lot the last couple of years, and now it's more into fitness pageant. Uh, Sadly, a lot of time genetics plays a kind of a big role. See, I'm not that tall. I'm 5'5.5". It's easy for me to build muscle. I'm 60 years old, but I'm still very lean. And it's very easy to put on, even at my age, to put on size. But my dad was like that. My mom was like that. There's a bit of a genetic factor. If you're going to enter a gym or you want to look like that, I train models. There's no way, unless they would take drugs, they would put on weight. Those are the girls that the other girls in the gym, they look at like, oh my God, look at her. She trains, she eats like a pizza. She trains like very heavy, and she trains a lot, and she doesn't even look, she's strong, but she doesn't put a pound. But that's genetic. Could be about 5%. Same with putting on muscle. It's not that easy to put on muscle. A lot of women over the years, when we develop these system, kind of like, oh, I put on a bit of size. And if you measure their fat test, usually they put on fat and not that much muscle. Again, don't get me wrong. When you start in a new program for the first couple of months, it may happen that you put on a bit of size. It's normal, but you have to calibrate with your diet. A lot of these bodybuilders, plus on drugs, they're borderline anorexic. The problem is, like, it's not very healthy. They don't eat. They eat a lot during the winter. Let's say they only compete in the summer, and they'll put on a lot of fat and a lot of bulk. They're big, and then now spring comes in. They know they'll have a 4 or 5 shows in a row. Then they're going to be emaciated, and this is not good. It's like the yo-yo diet. A lot of research, you've seen it in the past, especially women. They had a lot of gallbladder stone. They got a lot of, it's not good for you. We cannot move like this all the time. Like, that's why even with pregnancy, when I have athletes, or I always tell them, in the old days, they used to eat for two. You heard that. I have 6 sisters, and all of them, they put on a lot of weight. They were happy to be pregnant. Suddenly they could eat pizza and anything they wanted, but that's not good for them. A lot of them develop type 2B diabetes temporarily, and it's not good. You can't, any person, I trained a couple of actors, and they had to put on a lot of weight for films, and it really was, it was hard for them to go back down, but also they didn't feel good. Their health was damaged because of that. That's why, don't do, life is too short to go. Even when you train in the gym, don't train too hard. It's not, if you, Mercurial was one of the first guy in the 1500s to write a book, The Arte of Gymnastica. It's a great book. It's still available. It's almost like the protocols of what we do today. And he's a doctor. Mercurial was a doctor. And basically, he said, like, and I agree with that, you need to train every day, but not too much. Like, that's the key. You don't see that many bodybuilders making it to the 90s, or pro football players, or pro hockey players, or even Olympic athletes living very healthy in their 90s. You see dancers, you see yoga instructor, you see people, hikers, cross-country skier, like they go on, they move, they're in good shape, but they're not creating inflammation. Remember, every time you're pounding your body in the gym, if you don't sleep well, if you do too much, then you're creating a lot of inflammation. And during a pandemic like this, inflammation is the #1 cause of complication of whatever you get as a virus with COVID. That's the key. That's why some people, oh, look at her, look at him. They almost died of COVID, but they're athletes. When you take blood tests, when you analyze their body, and you know it, you work in that field, they're not healthy. Their markers of C-reactive protein, homocysteine is on the roof. All their inflammation markers are on out of whack. And that, although they look good, inside they're as worse as a 75-year-old obese. And that's sad. That's because they train too hard. It happens to a lot of endurance athletes. Endurance athletes are really prone, like triathletes, ultra marathon, they're really prone to these kind of inflammation. And God forbid there is like a virus or something, they might get in trouble, even if they're young and they look fit.
Great advice, and I couldn't agree more. Now, Paul Gagne, Master Strength Coach, this is a two-part question. Can you please explain for our audience the science of sets and reps? And second part of the question, what kind of sets and reps do you recommend for women?
Well, the science of sets or rep, basically, depending what you want to work. As an example, if you want to work more on relative strength, you want to keep it in between 3 to 5, 6 reps. Obviously, the reps are very low. You'll need more sets. There are equations that I won't go in detail, but we have calculations that to make it very, very simple, usually when the reps are very low, you need more sets, and the opposite. See, you will not do, unless you do like the German body comp or stuff that like 10 sets of 10, and you could do that. But I'm talking about in general, in the literature, if you want to work low rep, like 1 to 5, you do way more sets than if you're going to work then 20 reps, you're going to go less sets. Women traditionally loves endurance. If you look in the gym, you see guys wear on the bench press right away. Women, they're on a treadmill or on a bike or the glute machine. That's okay as a warm-up, but if you spend too much time, again, using time under tension too long, you might not get the effect that you want. You might lose muscle mass because you're not building enough if you do too much endurance, or if you have a genetics to put on a bit of size through time under tension, because some women, they do also, then you will be very disappointed. You'll be frustrated that your genes, you start a spinning class after 6 weeks. I just bought a big bike in the house. It cost me $5,000 and with a program, and then I'm putting on, my jeans don't fit anymore. I feel better, but the jeans are off. The bike is out of the door, and there's all my $5,000. But that's why, generally, that's why in the book, we recommend anywhere from 3 to 5, even 6 sets, but very low reps to keep the time under tension as low as we can and keep the athleticism, the bounciness, the bit of plyometrics mixing all the time. Also, women benefit a lot of what we call analytical segmental strength training. The good old Jane Fonda type of movement on the side with the hip. Guys, they need it, but women too, to stabilize their hip joint more. They have a tendency to have a bit of hip because of the Q angle, because they benefit a lot of these type of movement because you're not in close kinetic chain. You could use high rep because the load is very, very low. You could do like 30, 40, 50 seconds of these, but you don't do 20 sets. You do 1 or 2 because the reps are very high, the amount of sets are low. But don't be afraid to be on the floor, to do these horse stance, you do these movement, the side bridge, the side movement, they're very beneficial for male and female, but generally my female athlete will benefit more when they do a lot of that preparation. Like my skiers in Beijing, they're on the slope every day. They don't have that much time to train. Most of the stuff like we did this morning was segmental analytical reinforcement. All these little muscles, shoulder blades, glutes, lower back, abdominals, kind of very small movement combined with the breathing. The breathing is the key. We specialize in that. We mentioned a bit in the book, but not that much, of the key of the breathing. That's the key, to understand how breathing only through your nose, never your mouth. And also we have different type of, it's called, I have a program, it's called airflow restriction, different type of device we use, different type of movement. We even nose clips, same thing. We use these devices in the mouth to increase lung capacity in your diaphragm. That will benefit a lot to increase your metabolic rate. And when you mix breathing with training, it becomes very, very interesting, especially for women that don't want, and people, they don't have that much time to train.
Great answer. And I'm so old that, people say I'm so old that I remember when I first started exercising, I would exercise to the Jane Fonda record. And
Yep.
to talk about the kinds of exercises you were talking about, she would do fire hydrants and donkey kicks,
Yep.
which are very stabilizing. Now, Paul Gagne, master strength coach, how can regular women lose body fat by lifting weights?
Well, by increasing your muscle mass, you're increasing basically your expenditure. The car becomes bigger. See, it's not, a muscle doesn't take that much room. See, if I don't know if you ever seen a bodybuilder, but when they're on stage, they look like a monster. And a lot of times they come next to you like, oh, that person is so tiny. Muscle doesn't take that much room. It's more dense, but it doesn't take room. That's why when you increase your muscle mass with a proper diet, not being anorexic, but just a proper diet, you're going to increase your muscle mass. Then you're going to burn fat more in the resting period, because the engine of the car is bigger. If you got a bigger engine, you're consuming more fuel. And when you move, you will be, your daily expenditure will be a lot more. Every step, it's almost like wearing a weight vest on you all day. You're going to expend a lot more. And this is all, and also hormonally, when you do strength training, testosterone goes up. Also, growth hormone plays a big role into the metabolism of what you eat. And depending on if you're a keto diet, there's many. There's not, I've been, again, working with athletes for 38 years. I cannot even today to say, oh, this is the diet. It's very individual. What I found over the years, a lot of women, they tend to work very well when they do intermittent fasting. And if you look in the literature, women are more equipped to fast than men, because survival of the species. If I'm your husband and I didn't catch a mammoth for the next couple of days, we don't have to eat, but we have 4 kids at home and they're breastfeeding, they need to be alive. See, that's the thing. Or you need to be, mom has to be, you have more of that survival kind of mechanism in your body to do that. That's why women will tend to put on fat quicker than men. They will tend. Although it's debatable depending on the diet, it depends on the context, and it depends also how you feel about eating. A lot of it, there's that nocebo effect and placebo. If you feel what you're eating, it's good for you, and you eat it in very nice, no sound, no telephone, no blue light. And like in the old days, and you eat slow, then you'll be absorbing a lot of your nutrients. If you're feeling like you're cheating and you're eating bad, that's the nocebo. Your body will not like that. It will not. There's a lot of study on that. That's showing, like, be careful how your mindset when you train and when you eat will make a big difference. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a master of mindset. One of the best movies for everybody is Pumping Iron. Even if you don't like bodybuilding, just the way he talks, the way you see that why that young big guy became the governor. And if he had been American, he would have probably been the president. Because was he qualified? I'm not there to judge, but he had the charisma, he had the mindset, he understood how your mind works over matter.
So Paul Gagne, final question of the interview, and we'll need to keep this relatively short. As you know, many women rely on calorie restriction, AKA starvation, and/or intense cardio programs to lose weight rather than by lifting weights. Why, in your professional opinion, are these other approaches a very bad idea?
Well, again, you just said it. I don't like calorie restriction. I call them nutritional restriction. See, when you train a lot, you need more nutrients. Everybody needs nutrients, and this is why the more dense nutrients your food is, that's why a lot of intermittent fasting seems to help a lot of women. Not eating for 16, sometimes 18 hours seems to have a very good effect. Then you're able to consume denser nutrients and eating to your own feeling. You don't want to starve yourself because what happened, your body's going to scavenge muscle. After a while, that's the problem. After a while, not after a while, very quickly, if you don't have adequate fat and carbohydrates in your body, the body's going to start to cannibalize their own muscle. And then you're doing cardio, you become emaciated, but you put on fat. I don't know if you've seen some of the research, like aerobic instructor, Charles Poliquin, my late good friend, used to call it the chunky aerobic instructor syndrome. I mean, a lot of aerobic instructor or spinning instructor, females, especially when they did like 15, 20 hours a week of classes, they were kind of plump because the body felt like I'm in starvation. What do I do? Especially as women, oh, I keep all the fat I can. Anything I eat, I will keep it in case of the body doesn't know you're not into a war or there's something attacking your. That's why it's very important, a good balanced exercise mindset and lifting good weights, good resistance training.
Wonderful, valuable information. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. Our wonderful, knowledgeable guest today has been Master Strength Coach Paul Gagne, co-author with Kim Voss of Get Stronger, Not Bigger, the Bulkless, not Buckles, training system that helps women become powerful without adding muscle mass. And you can find out more about Paul Gagne and his wonderful work at his website, www.pg-performance.com. And remember, when you want to stay strong and healthy naturally as you age, you lift weights, you get in the gym and you become stronger. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.